Chapter 2. There comes a time when you're losing a fight, it just doesn't make sense to keep on fighting. I got the sense to know when enough is enough. I have been, I have, I was having this thought because Todd Amos was hitting me so hard and fast. I knew that the blood squirting out of my nose was only the beginning of a whole long list of bad things that were about to happen to me. Todd's next punch crashed into the side of my ear, and I fell to the floor, and I pulled my knees up to my chest and crossed my arms in front of my head like a turtle in a shell. I started scooching towards the bed, hoping I could get under it. Todd started kicking me, but his slippers couldn't hurt me near as much as his fists had. The bedroom door opened, and his mother, Mrs. Amos, came in. It seemed like she was having a hard time fighting or figuring out what was going on because Todd's right leg got tired from kicking me, and he switched over to his left one while she watched. Finally, Mrs. Amos said kind of soft, "Toddy." Todd looked up and fell to his knees and put his hands on his throat. He started huffing and puffing, with his eyes bucking out of his head and his chest going up and down so hard it looked like some kind of big animal was inside of him, trying to bust out. This was my chance to get under the bed and pull the covers down so they couldn't see me. Mrs. Amos ran over to her son and fell to her knees. She put her arms around his shoulders. "Toddy? Toddy, boy, are you all right?" She looked over to where I was peeking out from under the bed. "You little cur, what have you done to Toddy?" Todd coughed out, "Oh, mother." He took in two jumbo breaths. "I was only trying to help. He was sounding like a horse that had been run too hard in the winter, and look what got into me." Todd pointed to his jaw. Mrs. Amos and me both could see perfect print in the shape of my hand welt on Todd's blubbery cheek. With one quick snatch, she had me out from under that bed and out on the floor, laying down next to Todd. "How dare you? This is how you choose to repay me? Not only have you struck him, you've provoked his asthma?" Todd said, "I tried to waken him to make sure he'd gone to the lavatory, Mother. I was just trying to help." He aimed his finger dead at me and said, "And look at him, Mother. This one got a bedwetter written all over him." I'm not bragging when I say that I'm one of the best liars in the world, but I gotta tell you, Todd was pretty doggone good. It seemed like he knew some of the same things I knew, the things I think all the time in trying to remember so I don't make the same mistake more than 7 or 8 times. Shucks, I've gotten so many of them memorized that I had to give them numbers. And seemed like Todd knew number 3 of Bud Caldwell's rules and things of having a funner life and making a better liar out of yourself. Rules and things number 3. If you gotta tell a lie, make sure it's simple and easy to remember. Todd had done that, but it wasn't really a good test because Mrs. Amos had her ears to believe anything Todd said. In her eyes, Todd's mouth was a prayer book. But I can't blame Todd for lying like that. Having someone who like who likes you so much that they think everything you say is the truth has got to be a liar's paradise. That might feel so good. It could make you want to quit lying. But maybe not, because Todd hadn't quit lying since the second I came into the house. We had What really had happened was that I woke up from a good sleep because it felt like a stream of locomotive had jumped the tracks and chugged its way straight into my nose. When I jerked up in the bed, I opened my eyes and Todd was standing there next to me with a yellow pencil in his hand, and he was looking at it was a thermometer and said, "Wow, you got all the way up to R." He turned the pencil towards me and crunched it up against the headboard. I saw Ticonderoga printed in the yellow wood. The whole room smelled like a rubber from one of those erasers, and I was winking and blinking my left eye because it felt like something had poked me in the back of the eyeball. Todd laughed. "I've never gotten in that deep as as the N on any of you other little street urchins. I just might enjoy your stay here. Who knows what the other things you could do to be number one in, Buddy? I'd already told him twice my name was Bud, not Buddy. I didn't care that Todd Amos was 12 years old. I didn't care that he was twice as big as me. I didn't care that his mother was being paid to take care of me. I wasn't about to let anybody call me Buddy and stick a pencil up to my nose all the way to the letter R. I swung as hard as I could, and at Todd's big balloon head. Somewhere between the time I threw my first punch and the time it landed, my fist came open with it. My hand landed and made a pop like a 22 rifle going off. Todd fell to the floor like he'd been cold cocked. He sputtered and muttered and fell the spot where I'd slapped him. Then a big smile came across his face, and he stood up and started walking real slow towards where I was on the bed. He untied his robe, dropped it on the floor like he was getting ready to do some hard work. I jumped to the floor and got my fists up. Todd might have been a lot bigger than me, and he'd better be ready. This wasn't going to be a bird's nest sitting on the ground for him. He could kiss my wrist if he thought I was going to let him whip me up without a good fight. Being this brave was kind of stupid. Even though Todd was puffy, rich old mama's boy who wore a robe and slippers and could hit like a mule, and it wasn't too long before I decided enough was enough. But this story that Mrs. Amos was hearing from her lying son was only that Todd had tried to wake me up so I could go to the bathroom. Mrs. Amos's hatred of bedwetters more than anything in the world, and my bed had a sticky, hot, smelly rubber baby sheet on it. She'd said it wasn't anything personal, and after I had proved myself for 2 or 3 months, I could get a proper cloth sheet. But until then, I had to protect her mattress. She pulled Todd to his feet and led him to the door, and she looked at me. You're a beastly little brute, and I will not tolerate even one night with you under my roof. Who knows what you would be capable of while we slept? The door shut behind them. I heard a key jiggle in the lock. I pulled the right side of my nose and tried real hard to blow the smell of the rubber out of the left side. The key jiggled in the lock again, this time at the door. Mr. Amos was standing with Mrs. Amos. He was carrying my suitcase. Uh-oh. They looked inside. I could tell because the twine had held it together. Was the tie was tied in a kind of a knot that I didn't know. This was so wrong. They promised they'd keep it safe and not look in it. They laughed at me when I made them promise, but they did promise. Boy, Mrs. Amos said, I am not the least bit surprised at your show of ingratitude. Lord knows I have been stung by my own people before. But take a good look at me because I'm the one person who totally fed up with you and your ilk. I do not have the time to put up with this foolishness of those members of our race who do not want to be uplifted. In the morning, I'll be getting in touch with the home, and much as a bad penny, you shall be returning to them. I am a woman of my word, though you shall not spend one night in my house. She looked at her husband. Mr. Amos will show you to the shed tonight, and you can come back in tomorrow for breakfast before you go. I do hope your conscience plagues you with because you may have ruined things for many others. I do not if I shall ever be able to help another child in need. I do know I shall not allow vermin to attack my poor boy in his own house. She talked like this, like she wasn't even a preacher or a teacher. Shucks, she talked strange like this and wasn't even a librarian. I only halfway listened to what Mrs. Amos was saying. I was too busy keeping my eye on my suitcase, wondering if they had stolen anything from it, and thinking about getting even. When I thought she was done talking, I reached for my hand out for my suitcase, but she told Mr. Amos, "Oh no, we shall hold on to this beloved valuables." She laughed. "This shall be our assurance that nothing comes up missing from our house, and that this little animal is still here in the morning. He is too far attached to those treasures to go anywhere without him." Mrs. Amos was one of those grown ups who could always think of one more thing to say. "And that is not all. Before you retire to the shed, you shall go to Todd and apologize, or I shall be forced to give you The strapping of your life. I'd been so worried about my suitcase that I didn't even notice a thick black razor strap hanging out of Mrs. Amos's hand. She didn't have to worry, I'd apologize. One beating from those Amoses was enough for me. She grabbed my arm. Mr. Amos walked out to the room with the suitcase. Mrs. Amos pulled me down to the hallway of the room. We stood outside the door and listened to Todd groan. When Mrs. Amos came back, my suitcase was gone. He'd been so quick that I knew my bag couldn't be far away. She tapped on Todd's door and said, "Toddy, may I come in?" Todd's groans got a lot louder. But yes, mother, choke cough. Come in. We opened the door, and as soon as we saw me, Todd got a real terrified look on his face. He scooched up to the headboard and wrapped his arms around his head. Mrs. Amos gave me a shake. Well, I put my head down and started shooting apologies out like John Dillinger shoots out the bullets. I aimed at for Todd first. I know it was wrong of me to hit you. I know you were only trying to help, and I'm very sorry for what I did. I looked at Mr. Amos. And sir, I am sorry that I got you out of your sleep. He rolled his eyes like that was enough for him. Mrs. Amos was going to be the hardest because, like her ears, were set to believing everything that came out of Todd's lips. We're not we're not set not to believe anything I said. And if I didn't lie good enough, she was going to use that strap on me. Those Amoses might look like a bunch of cream puffs, and if she's anything like Todd, I bet she could pack a real wallop. And Mrs. Amos, I'm so grateful for all your help, and I'm really, really sorry. I looked up and I could see she needed more. If you give me another chance, I promise I'll do a whole lot better. Please don't call the home. Please don't send me back. Shucks. Going back to the home was just what I wanted to do, but I was being just like Brett or Bear Rabbit in one of those books Mama used to read to me at night when he yelled out, "Please, Bear Fox, don't throw me into the picker patch, please, please." But this was another one for the Bud Caldwell rules, and things have to have funner life than to make better liar than yourself. Rules things number 118. You have to give adults something that they think they can use to hurt you by taking it away. That way, they might not take something away that you really don't do want. Unless they're crazy or real stupid, they won't take everything because if they did, they wouldn't have anything to hold over your head or hurt you with later. I stopped talking and gave Mr. Amos a chance to jump right in, or Mrs. Amos. She held her hand up to my face and said, "Enough." Mr. Amos give him the blanket and pillow off the bed. He was put in and put him in the shed. Todd said, "Yeah, buddy, keep a sharp eye out for the vampire bats in the shed." It was like a miracle. Todd's asthma was gone, and he turned out into a real chatterbox. Oh, and watch out for those spiders and centipedes, buddy. The last kid that we got put out there got stung so bad he swelled up in a big whale when we went out to get him out in the morning. I guess I didn't look scared enough because Todd kept saying that the kid that was hasn't been found yet to this day. All that's left is a big puddle of his blood in the floor. Isn't that right, Mother? Mrs. Amos said. Now, Toddy, hush up. You'll just tire yourself out more. I noticed that she never denied the things Todd said about the vampires or the centipedes or the spiders or the puddles of blood. So as I followed Mr. Amos, I kept a sharp eye out for my suitcase. When we got to the first kitchen, the first thing I saw was that there was a double-barreled shotgun leaning against the side of the icebox. I didn't have time to wonder why they'd be so scared to keep a big gun like that out in the open because I spotted my suitcase slid way under the kitchen table. I didn't let Mr. Amos know I'd seen it. But it did make me get a lot calmer. He went out the back kitchen door and down to the steps to the dark. We walked around the back of the shed and he put the key in the padlock. A chain rattled, a lock came off, and the door creaked open. Even though it was nighttime and there was a whole different, scarier kind of dark in the shed, a colder dark with more grays and more shadows. The old smell leaked out, and it seemed like it was the perfect smell that all this gray would have. Mr. Amos nudged me, and I took a baby step into the shed. He could kiss my wrist if he thought I was going to beg him and say things like, "I'll do anything folks ask me to keep me locked up here alone." I squeezed my tongue between my teeth and hold it till it's still because I know a lot of times your brain might want to be brave, but your mouth might let some real chicken swounding stuff fall out of it. I stood there a little bit and looked around. Right under the window, a pile of stacked wood. There were a bunch of dusty spider webs. In front of the little window, someone had pasted an old yellow newspaper over the glass so the kids who got locked in couldn't peek out. Mr. Amos handed me a blanket and the pillow and gave me another nudge. I took two more baby steps in. I looked at the floor. It was like normal. If I was a normal kid, I would have busted out crying. But I just stood there, breathing hard. It was a good thing I bit my tongue because I came real close to saying those stupid begging words to Mr. Amos. Right in the middle of the floor, there was a big black stain in the dirt. They really was going to make me sleep in a shed with a patch of blood from a kid who disappeared out of here a couple of weeks ago. The floor was completely black. When Mr. Amos pulled the door shut, I couldn't see it now, but I had memorized the exact shape of the stain was in. The padlock snapped shut with the loudest click I'd ever heard.